Hey everybody! Recently, Vsalt had an expert panel discussion on faster payment strategy, and we brought in experts from all around the industry to share their thoughts on what it takes to create a faster payment strategy. The first thing we asked them was, where do you start? The number one question is, well, where do I start? Where do I begin? Now, we've got 5 different views that we're going to be able to give you of where do you start, where do I begin? And where do you start, where do you begin? Let's start with that global perspective. Leo, where should somebody start when it comes to developing their payment strategy?
I have a very simple and a very straightforward answer. Actually, you start with your underlying business strategy, right? Which is, what is it that you as a financial institution want to be? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Right? Are you focused chiefly on the consumer market? Are you focused chiefly on corporate markets? Is it a blend of the two? Do you have special types of customers that need special types of payments and so on and so forth? So that's the first question, is what is the underlying business strategy? What is it that you're trying to achieve? And from that, you begin to derive the payment strategy from that, right? So that, for example, if you are a consumer-focused financial institution, right, then you may want to begin, for example, with issues related to P2P payments. You may want to begin with issues related to bill payments. You may want to begin with those sorts of things, consumer-initiated payments. If you're corporate-focused, then you're going to be focused on more business, right? More business-initiated payments, and so on. So those are the basic elements of that. Once you begin to look at the details, however, okay, of course, it begins to get a little bit more complicated. It begins to say, okay, so if I want consumer-focused payments, what sorts of rails are available to me? How do I deal with that from a product perspective? How do I deal with that from a pricing perspective? How do I then educate and market this to my customers to be able to use it, and so on and so forth? What impact is it going to have on my profitability? What impact is it going to have on my other products? And so on and so forth. And these are the sorts of questions that we've seen financial institutions look at to great effect, right? And then actually use a good payment strategy either as a method of competitive advantage, or as a method of, how should I say, survival, right? It's the sort of thing that if you don't have a payment strategy, if your payment strategy doesn't match up and support your underlying business strategy, then others are going to come and eat your lunch.
First of all, I got to say, great job of answering the question with asking a question, because that's what I got out of that first minute, folks. If you weren't wildly taking notes like I were, and I'm sure you were, and don't worry, we'll be able to work to get you some of those questions back out of what is being discussed in this to help you, in case, so you don't have to worry about wildly taking notes. But I also saw that competitive advantage. You can get a competitive advantage about doing this. And I really like that aspect of it too. But there are a lot of questions that have to be answered when it comes to starting your payment strategy. Now, we've had the global perspective. I want to hear now, let's jump over to the credit union perspective. When it comes to how credit unions are looking at faster payments and developing a strategy, Lisa, what are you hearing? What is it that you're telling the financial institutions, the credit unions, your members especially, that you're working with on what you should do to develop your faster payment strategy?
We've kind of developed a strategy. We kind of broke it down to make it easy, and we've been doing a lot of training, and Pam has been helping me on this, on developing your payment strategy. And we kind of broke it into 4 parts, but it all supports what Leo said. It supports your business why, what your strategy is, and what you're here to do, and what your core value is as a business. So we broke it down with first evaluating your current payment products, then look at your data to see what your members, what for credit unions or your customers are doing, and then kind of list out what are your pain points of your members / customers, or even internal pain points, and then constantly evaluate and look at payment trends. and not just look at new arising trends, but also reevaluate and look at existing vendors and see what these fintechs are doing and the new things that they're coming. It's a constantly changing environment, and you need to stay up on it and need to be aware of what your competition is. I think as financial institutions today, we always just assume our competition is each other. That's no longer the case. We have fintechs out there in the US that are in our space and have adopted our core values that make us different. And they have the different products, not us. We are kind of being outdone. And what Attila even described and said, you have to be in this game or you will be out of the game. So basically four areas: current payment products, start with that, see where you're at, look at the data, see what your customer base, member base is doing, list out what your pain points and expectations of your members are, and then constantly evaluate trends and develop your plan off of that.
That was awesome. I love how you've already quoted one of the other panelists and helped us with that on you have to be in the game. That's for sure. Her 4 points. I love that. Evaluate what's happening. What do you currently have? Look at the trends. Look at what your data is telling you too. That's such a big one. And the pain points. Now, you also hit on training at the beginning. Yeah, of course, y'all know Payments Professor, I'm big on training. Somebody else I know is big on training is our payment associations that are out there. And we have people like Pam that they offer services to help you get your payment strategy developed. Now, I don't mean for this to be a sales call, but I'm telling you, there are people and organizations out there like Pam's that can help you when it comes to developing the payment strategy. And I love that she's worked with you, Lisa, to be able to do some of this education. So let's go ahead and let's see what Pam would have to add to where do you start when it comes to developing that payment strategy?
Well, thank you, Kevin. And you know me, I always want to dummy it down, and love the phrase, you know, are we going to make dog food that the dogs won't eat? So you got to know what kind of dog food they're eating and what kind of dog food they want. And what?
I'm just wondering who the dog is in this scenario.
It's our FIs and their strategies. So when I go in, for example, and I said I come in from maybe a little different perspective, but doing risk assessments. And I asked to review the strategic plan, and I see a huge gap when I review, and thank you, Lisa, for nodding your head there. I see a huge gap when reviewing a financial institution's strategic plan because I don't see a digital strategy. And had the pleasure last week of Jorge Jimenez, who's an advisor on the Faster Payments Council, spoke at my conference. And he touched on this very topic, and he even took it to, I guess, another level. And here we say, keeping it simple. That digital payment strategy should also include online account opening. And so we talk about faster payments and here again, dummying it down, but how many financial institutions aren't doing just the simple things? How many financial institutions, you know, the different flavors of fast, if you will, and maybe we're just slow here in Alabama, but how many credit unions aren't even tipping their toes in the water to even originate? And so I think we have a real opportunity here. I know, Attila, from a city perspective, you live in a probably a much different world than community banks and smaller credit unions. And so for me, it's, as you said, Kevin, providing, you know, the constituents we serve are the community banks and credit unions, and helping. And, you know, we do consulting to help them update their strategic plan to ensure that they've addressed I'll say a digital strategy that is faster payments as well as simple things like online account opening. So I think my 2 minutes are up.
Your 2 minutes are up. And in fact, now I think we're going, you mentioned Attila, so you set him up. We're going to go ahead and we're going to move over from the bank, especially the larger bank perspective. Where did you start? Where do you start when it comes to developing the payment strategy? Because we're getting all the different angles here. So Attila, what do you got to say on that?
Thank you so much. So I'm gonna actually piggyback on what Leo, Lisa, and Pam said. Right, focus on what matters to your organization. You need to look at your client base. You need to understand what are their needs. What are the gaps that you currently have that you cannot attend to those needs appropriately? Banking is repetitive. Everything is a manual task, which can cause a huge distraction. And it is a big barrier to success. You need to be able to be in a position that you can automate as much as you can. You want to look at, I'm going to dig a little bit one step lower into your strategy. You want to look at, once you defined the appropriate channel that you're going to address, whether that's retail or commercial or both, you want to start looking at your connectivity options. With so many vendors that are in place within a larger financial institution, you want to continue to try to streamline, to consolidate if needed, so you can be able to go to market with certain products a lot more easier. You want to look at your technology, with significant focus on creating highly available and resilient infrastructures. Your legacy payment environment, it's not up to par to address the emerging payments that are entering the market. You want to look at your operations. We are going to go from 9-to-5 banking environments to 24/7, 365, always on environment, whether that's back office, middle office, or front office. You want to be able to train all of your internal colleagues, whether that's a client-facing or just operational environment, where you can leave them in a place that they can address the 24/7 aspect of payments. The one piece of this puzzle that sometimes gets lost in the translation a little bit, fraud. With things moving at a light speed, you want to be able to have the appropriate system that addresses your fraud needs, your risk needs, your compliance needs. And then when it comes to all of this, putting it together, adoption, how do you get your message across with executive management? And then from that place, going down the chain across every business line and every level, you need to engage your customers internally and externally. You want to develop a targeted marketing strategy if you have to, that would address your particular clients that you work with and you're most successful with. So a lot that has to happen, and practically for the stars to align up for a financial institution to go down that path and be successful. But there are tools in place within the industry that can assist you to get where you need to get.
All right, I'm going to be coming back to you on the tools in place at some point in time. I'm sure I'm going to leave that one as a cliffhanger, but there's 3 words that really stuck out to me in that one, and that was adoption. And then you use the F word too. We're going to have to get to that one at some point in time. And then technology. Well, let's get a little bit of technology perspective of where do you start when it comes to building your payment strategy, because technology is going to be really important on that. So Abhishek, what would you say to somebody who's looking to build a payment strategy from especially the technology side that you represent of what they should be doing?
Kevin, first, I think it's important. This is a program for all ages. Attila, please don't use the F word again. Really, Kevin, I'm a technologist first. That's my bread and butter. And when we're talking about technology, we tend to see first a fear of missing out, right? Especially when we're talking about a faster payment strategy, we see a fear of missing out. You start feeling the need to do something because you don't feel like you're doing anything. You feel like you need to do something. But then after that initial wave of FOMO or fear of missing out, there then becomes a second wave where we start to overcorrect. So where we start to have a fear of missing out, where we're trying not to do anything because we're scared we're doing something in fear. Now, let me unpack that a little bit because I just said scared, fear, fear, scared in that order. The discussion needs to be around thinking from a technology perspective that a faster payment is just another payments file, it's just another payments message, it's just another way for my institution to interact with the global economy, for my institution to interact with other institutions in my network and across those faster payments rails. I asked institutions that haven't quite all the way thought about faster payments, or are scared about thinking about faster payments, or feel like they're technologically limited on faster payments, to think about it like this. You are emailed a document by one of your coworkers, asked to open it, we need a turnaround by the end of the day, and you find out that you don't have any application installed on your machine that can open that file. That from a technology perspective is what we're looking at, and that's kind of where we're headed. As far as a fragmentation of the payments market, and really a lot of that fragmentation has been addressed by the implementation of standards such as the ISO 20022. I'll be calling it 20022. Some people call it 222. Tomato. For us, it's all really about, let's first figure out how you can receive those files. Incoming payments is always a good thing. So from a strategic output perspective, we can always revisit how strategically you're sending payments, what types of sending payments make sense to your financial institutions that you service, or your account holders that you service, depending on the type of institution that you are. Receiving is always always has the upside of creating cross compatibility across networks, and that should also be factored into your strategic thinking.
Wow, that was incredible. Start with your underlying business strategy. What are you, as a financial institution, trying to achieve? Are you focused on the consumer, the corporate, or maybe a blend of both markets? Do you have any special types of customers? Evaluate your current payment products. Look at and analyze your data to see what your account holders are actually doing. List out the pain points of yours and your account holders. Those pain points are very important. And constantly evaluate and look at the payment trends. What else did our experts have to say? Are we going to make dog food that the dogs won't eat? Make sure you're making a product they actually want. The digital payment strategy must include the simplest things. Look at your technology and create highly available and resilient infrastructures. Our experts really shared a lot. And when it comes to things like adoption, make sure you have it from the top to the bottom. And you need to engage your people internally and externally. The first step is figure out how you can receive the files, at least from the technological answer, right? Then determine what kind of payments will make sense to you and your financial institutions. Also, receiving payments has the upside of creating compatibility across networks, and that should always be factored into your strategic thinking. And guess what? That's just the start. Those were some great comments, and there were more views shared from other experts. And if you'd like to hear and see what the other experts had to say, or maybe see the entire webinar on the faster payment strategy, then head over to paymentsprofessor.com. I'll put a link to the webinar in the description to help. For now, class dismissed.